Welcome, everybody. This is our final show of the year for Project Synapse. Those of you who've been following this, we started meeting informally to just talk about AI and try and keep up with that. As a group, we've tried to share our expertise, our knowledge, and our questions together. About 6 episodes ago, we decided we'd record these and put them out. They've been a big hit with many of our listeners. This is our year-end program, and we have our usual panel of John Pinard, who we hired. We thought he was John Picard, and then I went,
Jean-Luc Picard.
You've never been on the Enterprise, but John Pinard, and he's worked out great.
But he works in Enterprise.
That's right. Yeah, no, he works in Enterprise. And Marcel Gagné, when did I run into you? First of all, Marcel was ages ago, but I knew about him because I used to read the Cooking with Linux blog and all of the stuff that he'd written and didn't know who he was, and finally met him. And so that the three of us are together. And what I want to do with this discussion this week is try and catch us up, because I said last week we'd had a tsunami of AI. The problem with hyperbole is, where do you go from there? For those of you who are watching this in the video, I used to have a comedian that I just loved, and he'd do this thing where he'd raise his eyebrows up like this, and he says, this is the problem, is where do you go from here? And that's the problem I have, is my eyebrows are fully up. Where do we go from here? We had the week that was, and I think it was an amazing week. One of the things that I noticed was, and we'll go over it, was OpenAI's announcements. They certainly prove that they're the best marketing house in AI still, and with their 12 days, and they still have one more day. And we're actually going to do we record these. No surprise. We don't come to your house on Saturday morning ourselves and do the show. We actually record it in advance. And so we're all going to do a watch party of OpenAI's announcement this afternoon. And we're going to come back and do a little bit of a trailer to celebrate whatever it might be. Any guesses as to what they're going to announce today?
Almost feels like the only way to top off this week, to finish it up, is to announce the next frontier model. And there is some speculation out there that GPT-5 is probably not it, because there's fine tuning and whatever that's happening in the background. These are the rumbles that I'm hearing out there, but that you'll probably see a GPT 4.5, or the other one that I've seen floated is we jump straight from 01 to 03. What does any of this mean? But
if we're not marketing announcements,
but if we're not launching a new frontier model at the end of this parade of new and exciting things, then it almost feels like you have to launch, if nothing else, a point version of the frontier models. Because really, when you come down to it, we're still basically dealing with, I know we've got the reasoning model 01, but in terms of the base frontier model, we're still dealing with 4.0, which is awesome. But that's where we are. And I find it amazing that we actually think in these terms. But it used to be that we'd see something amazing like this coming out. This was the realms of science fiction, talking to the computer on Star Trek back in the 60s and stuff like that. And now it's 6 months later and we're going, so what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's sort of
it's freaking magic.
And that's
it sort
the
of feels
problem
like, no, it is like that scene in Star Trek where Scotty comes in there and he goes, computer. And he says, no, you use this, the mouse. So he picks up the mouse, holds it, computer. And then he grabs the keyboard and types 150 words a minute into it, just as a thing. So those guys could appreciate tech. Now it would be like, you can't talk to it?
Yeah.
No.
I was going to say, as far as where do you go, like what's day 12 going to look like? It's hard to say, because other than coming out with a new model, they've already come out with video. They've already come out with the voice. They've come out with all of these other things. To me, it has to be something big, or it's going to just be a lunch bag letdown, this lead up to the last day, and then they just push you off a cliff.
Yeah. I'm going to do 12 days of extreme marketing. And the last one's going to be, we ran out of ideas.
Exactly.
Because I couldn't figure this out when they launched Sora day 3, and we'll talk about that, which turned out to be a bit of a letdown, I think, but it was the one everybody was watching for. They did that day 3. I said, where do they have to go from here? My guess today is glasses. I know that's probably tough, but that's my guess. And I don't know how they'll pull it off, because there's all of the manufacturing. It'll probably be an announcement that talks about something in the near future or something. But that's my guess, unless it's a new model, like you said, Marcel.
Yeah.
We're focusing on OpenAI, I realize, but there have been a couple of things that have happened this week where it's OpenAI's thunder was stolen by, who could have seen this one coming? Google. And Google released their true real-time video model before OpenAI did. Now, what OpenAI did was they put it inside the so anybody can use it like from their phone. So they then went up to Google after that. But then Google released its new leading edge model. And I don't know if you noticed, like if here we go with the jokes about Marcel subscribes to everything. But if you subscribe to Gemini Advanced, to the Gemini premium product, they dropped yesterday their 2.0 experimental advanced full model.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is, and of course, so they've got a reasoning model. They've got a full real-time video reasoning a multimodal model so that you can basically stick it in your shirt, like in the movie Her, where it sees the entire world and can comment on what's happening. But again, like I said, OpenAI went up that. But then on top of that, we've got Nvidia. Nvidia is the company that is really the winner in all of this, because they're the ones supplying the hardware to all of these companies. And of course, they've got back orders going 10 years into the future or something stupid like this. Yeah. And yesterday they released, I don't know if you noticed this or if you caught this news in the tsunami.
$250 computer.
$250 AI powered little computer that is supposed to basically live inside robots.
Yep.
So that it can do this amazing real-time processing. I don't know about you, but I was like ready to drop $250 at the end of the day yesterday. I'm sure you've had the Raspberry Pis. I've played with Raspberry Pis for years. And I'm sitting there thinking, just give me one of these damn things.
I had to install something that can only run on Windows. And I'm a Mac guy. And
you admit that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We all have to have one of them, Marcel.
My name is Jim and I'm a Macaholic. But so I dusted off this Windows machine I had and realized it wasn't going to cut it anymore. So I said I have to buy a new Windows machine, $300, Windows 11, just Amazon type. Now, so how do you top that? Jensen Huang comes out. I think this thing has, I can't remember how many teraflops it has. It's not the 750 teraflop ones, I think, or 7,000. Like the top line model is $2,000, but even this bottom line one that we're talking about for $250 would wipe the floor with any computer that anybody's gotten in their house right now at all.
Right. Yeah. And they see one of these things basically built into the body of your humanoid robot.
So he is, and this is why I think there's an old business school story about, or at least an old business school guy taught it. That was me. And I used to say in the Klondike gold rush, if you measure all the gold that people took out, forget that this guy got rich and this guy got rich, 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 or 20, or 100, whatever it is. If you measure all the gold that they all actually took out of the Klondike and value that, it probably does not even come close to the amount of money that was generated by the guys who sold pickaxes, wagons, and Levi Strauss. And that's what Jensen Huang is just sitting in the right spot. Even Canada made an announcement. We covered it. The story was Canada discovered there's AI. Don't relax. Our government actually discovered it. And we're going to get a bargain on this because we're going to spend $2 buying Nvidia chips. I think there's $300 million going to some funds that will allow people to buy some compute cycles and things like that. But for the most part, this is going to go into infrastructure.
Well, you're familiar with the concept we all know the concept of sunk costs. Like you put the money in, you're going to basically stick with it until the bitter end, no matter what.
It's like my investment strategy.
Yes. For many of us, I'm sorry to say. But in the case of AI, so much has already been sunk into it and so much is earmarked for the foreseeable future that it's like the people who are basically predicting the end of it, it's a bubble that's going to burst or something like that. I'm not sure that anybody will allow this bubble to burst. Certainly not in the next 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever.
There is so much every person before the bubble burst.
No, I'm aware of that. Yeah. No, I'm aware of that. And to be perfectly honest, I have never been an investor or never mind a savvy investor. Let's just put that aside for the moment.
Let that go.
But sorry, go ahead. Finish your stuff.
No, but that's just it. But with all these investments that are going on, I honestly think that people are going to keep pushing at this for some time. And we're either going to get AGI, super intelligence, whatever the heck it is that we're heading towards, or we're not. But the fact of the matter is we're going to continue going down this road looking for it because all of the biggest companies in the world are involved in that race at the moment. And not only every company in the world is into it, all of the major governments of the world are in this race.
Yeah.
And this is how we got to the moon. We got to the moon because there was a race to the moon. And this is definitely a race in which ridiculous amounts of money, more than the space program, looks tiny compared to what we're putting into this stuff.
But I
Yep.
also think that when people started talking about AI 18 months, 2 years ago, you had ChatGPT essentially. That was a tool you could type into and that was it. But with everything that's come out, and even with the last 11 and soon to be 12 days, that everything that OpenAI has thrown on the table, it's forced the other players to come to the table as well to show that they've got the same type of thing. And I think the big difference to me is that OpenAI has come with their big red bag of Christmas gifts and dropped them all on the table over a 12-day window. Whereas Google, all of these other companies are coming out with little bits and pieces. I think over the next 6 months, you're going to see a lot of them come out with a lot of these new tools and things. Even OpenAI, some of what they have announced is either partially there now or coming in 2025. Jim, you talked about you're a window or a Mac guy. I'm a Windows guy. I do have a Mac, but the surprising thing for me is I think this is one of the first times where I've actually seen things other than Adobe's Creative Suite, but this is one of the first times I think I've seen a lot of things coming out for the Mac first versus Windows. And
Nope.
Windows users will have to wait to get the same functionality. But I think, as I said, over the next 6 months, OpenAI is going to finish what they've announced in the last 12 days. And you're also going to see a lot of the other vendors coming to the table. And I guess my question / concern is going to be who's going to end up winning the race, right? Is it the slow guy that comes out and does it right the first time, does it thoughtfully and comes out with all of the tools that they need? Or the guy that comes out up front and goes, here's a whole bunch of stuff. It's 90% there, and we're going to enhance it as we go. And
Do you want some wild speculation?
absolutely.
The idea or the founding premise behind OpenAI was to develop responsible AI and specifically AGI. It was a path to AGI.
Mhm.
And in some ways, a lot of things have been promised and so on. But I wonder if in the heart of and remember, some of these tech AI people they're looking forward to the singularity. They're looking forward to this age of incredible abundance as we're ruled over by machines of loving grace, to quote that old poem by Bronigan. Idea, however, of releasing these things and constantly feeding us with these things one after another does have the effect of pushing everyone else to develop faster, to bring things out much faster, to bring them out into the environment, to keep pushing that envelope. And somewhere in the back of somebody's head, there may very well be the idea that the only way to bring about this thing and bring it about quickly is to put the fire under everybody's butt simultaneously. And it's where we are at the moment. This is exactly what we're seeing. And we haven't even brought the Chinese into this, who are doing incredible work in AI.
Alibaba's open source model is blowing the tires off many things. We tend to be centric around the major players for good reason, I think, in many cases. I think they do have something. But let's not forget the history of this. Everybody likes to rewrite the history. And John, you're not being critical of what you said, because I think you captured the zeitgeist of what you said. AI has been around for 70 years.
Yes, you're right.
And what happened 2 years ago was some guys at OpenAI were having coffee and watching the fact that they dumped a whole pile of stuff into this model. And they were on a totally different track at that point. I can't remember what they were developing, but they were not developing conversational AI. Somebody went up and went, come here, take a look at this. And it wrote them a poem or something like that. They said, holy shit. And that's what happened. So we've fallen in love with marketing conversational AI. Now, has that accelerated the development? Yes. Has it done incredible things? Yes. But it did that from the point of view of, as you pointed out, Marcel, somebody lit a fire under everybody's ass. Google was plodding along, developing AI the way they were going to do it. Amazon was doing and still is doing AI in the way they were going to do it. And somebody captured the imagination of the public.
Yes, for
Now
sure.
everything, it made Jensen Huang a multi-billionaire, I think. And so what's going to happen now, this is going to be adopted in the industry at the speed that industry can absorb it. And that's going to be an interesting question. But the bubble, and Marcel, that's why I think there is a bubble. We're investing hundreds of billions of dollars, potentially, if you stock it up, trillions. And I'm not using that number lightly. If you actually go and take a look at what people have, I think 500 billion here, 500 billion there, soon you're talking real money. And they've all bought Nvidia chips to the future. Elon Musk is in there building the big supercomputer. So there's a huge construction, which has a problem, and that is we don't have enough power to run it. And
did you see the news about the fusion reactor that started construction this morning? They seem to think that it's going to work. They believe that it will come online in the early 2030s.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a 10-year construction project, but they believe that this thing will be generating ridiculous amounts of energy in the next 10 years. And then, of course, we've got these modular nuclear power plants that companies are investing in.
Yeah.
By modular, instead of something that takes the space of 3 Mile Island or up here, a Bruce nuclear power plant, this is the sort of thing that would be on the size of your typical school playground. It's still a big thing, but it's not this massive sprawling thing. And then they could have these things dotting the landscape.
Prefab, so you can order them from Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and if you order them on Prime Day,
you can get them between 4 and 8 a.m.
And of course, Canada's not even entering that one. Once again, I'm disappointed in my country. Their motto is no can do. Anyway, all of this stuff is ramped up. This is where I think the potential bubble is. People think when a bubble bursts that the world ends. In 2000 and 2001, the whole internet bubble burst.
.com.
But 2 years later, Salesforce was coming out. The bubbles burst because they can't sustain the initial excitement. And that may very well be, we might get to that level where we can't sustain that excitement and we have to wait till everything else develops. But this time, I got to tell you, the fusion reactor is new to me, but this has accelerated a lot of other things and may very well push us to clean energy, to a number of other things that are essential in our society.
Yeah, with the amount of energy that's required to run this infrastructure, I can't see that it's not going to. I was actually chuckling a bit. I live in Pickering and we have a nuclear plant here, and everybody's been talking about, I got to get rid of the nuke and all the rest of this. But now they're talking about bringing these, a nuclear plant coming to a backyard near you kind of thing.
But nuclear was an overreaction. If you actually,
yes,
once you take a look,
overreaction. That's right up with can do.
If you take a look at the actual amount of nuclear fuel, what happened? The United States refused to have reactors that would run spent nuclear fuel. They're the only country in the world that did that. So they've accumulated a lot of nuclear waste, and so have we. But if you actually put that together, it's not a lot, all things considered. Considering the environmental damage that's going to be done by coal and all those other power plants, a lot of the people from the green energy movement are saying, maybe we shouldn't have been so bad about it.
The other thing too is people have this weird idea. Okay, the past is not the present and the present is not the future. People have this weird idea. It's, nuclear is this. And they have a picture of nuclear from 40, 50 years ago. Well, 40, 50 years has gone by since then.
Yeah.
And you have to get it out of your head.
This thing called innovation.
We're not living 50 years ago anymore.
So just to tie this up, the point was, I think, that we can be obsessed with the bubble. And if you are buying stock, by all means, be obsessed with it, because you're going to have that peak and that valley if history runs the same way it has for every other development of technology, our modern history. But also remember that in the long run, these things come through. Now, the question is, how fast does that cycle run? When we look at it, when I did my book, my nonfiction book was about the adoption of technology and how that digital transformation was affected. And I said, you take a look at how long it took us to bring in electricity or steam. And then how long did it take us to bring in the telephone? And then how long did it take us to bring in the mainframe? And those cycles keep shortening and shortening and shortening. So we may be in a boom bust, but it may be faster than anything we've seen.
I agree.
we like to refer to Moore's law when it comes to the number of transistors on a chip and so forth, doubling every 18 months and so on. But if you go back 100,000 years, and when you take a look at whatever technology humans were using at the time, we were still doubling every so many cycles in history. And it's just that the movement from nothing to controlling fire was a huge technological shift for a society that didn't have control of fire. And then, of course, we add these things, and of course, they're building on top of each other. But part of it has to do with the fact that we're not built to think in terms of exponential change. We're built to think in terms of linear. Things stay the same more or less
Yeah.
forever all the time, which is what you've seen through most of history. You mentioned the idea, Jim, that artificial intelligence started 70 years ago. I would argue that it started a lot longer ago than that, because if you go back and you read the Iliad, which I don't have to tell you is more than 70 years ago, there were automatons, there were androids in the story, the Iliad. Like, there were these mechanical beings that acted autonomously in this ancient piece of literature. So it's not like these are ideas that just happened overnight. It's the fact that we've been steadily working our way toward these ideas that we created sometimes thousands of years ago. It's just that as time goes on, Star Trek, the reason that we had the flip phones was because people watched Star Trek and they thought, that's so cool. I want one of those things in my hands.
And you can still use them to phone Chat GPT. I want to bring that up. So if you still have a flip phone, you may not be able to get, you may be still texting by pounding a key 3 times to get the letter, but you could call Chat GPT, and that's 1-800-CHAT.
Sorry, what's that number again? 1-800.
Oh, that was so cheesy that they're doing that. Let's go back to the situation, monsieur, that we're in. I think the issue we have to face is, and you said we think linearly. The other piece is humans are slow to change and are slower to change than technology. And that's going to be the interesting piece. I'm still hearing people saying we don't know how to get started with AI. It mystifies me. I sat on a call with somebody I regard as very intelligent and very advanced yesterday, and he said that his COO, his chief operating officer, said they're getting 0 productivity increase from AI. And I looked at him and said, call me.
Wow.
I'll come by because you're doing something wrong. But I wonder, and you can get into talk about bubbles. You can get into your own bubble of we're excited about it. We're interested in it. And I'm not sure how much is spreading yet. That's a question I have. And John, you're probably more in the real world of that than I am at this point. But I think how fast can organizations adopt this?
Yeah. I had meetings with 2 different C-level individuals at our organization this week. And the purpose of these meetings was to talk about AI. And it was the same. We want to use AI, but we don't know what to use it for. And I just started to rhyme off a few ideas of things that you could use it for. And they're like, oh, yeah, hey, we could do this with it, or that would help us to do this, or we could use it to write a business case that right now takes me 3 months to pull together when I'm doing it manually. But if I can take this and I can upload all of these documents and get ChatGPT or Copilot or one of these to help me to write this business case, I could do it in a couple of days. And so to me, it's still, for most companies, not for all companies, but for most companies, they still need to be looking at this as an AI assistant. I know you guys may or may not agree, but to me, that's at least a good way to get started into the utilization of it, is look to see how it can help you. A lot of companies, ours is no different, where we have an awful lot of extremely intelligent people that get paid reasonably well. And we're having them do a bunch of mundane tasks that we should be taking off their plate to give to an AI so that they can focus on the things that they're really being paid for, right? Nobody gets hired to come into a company to take minutes or to do action items. Not anymore.
But you pull somebody aside to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm a VP and I sit there spending a bunch of time booking meetings and taking minutes and things like that. So it takes me away from what they really hired me to do. So
Yeah.
if you can use AI to get rid of that, then you
And
can
there's two ways
actually,
you can tackle this. And again, historically, when you take a look at people are around long enough to remember the 1990s, we did a thing called re-engineering. And re-engineering, and I'm sure I'll get letters, it was a piece of crap.
yep,
Re-engineering was lay a bunch of people off and make up a story of how you restructured your company. And it was just garbage, as far as I'm
That's what
concerned.
inspired Dilbert.
But there were people who were doing lean at the time. And
Mhm.
lean was go through all your processes, find the waste in them, and find a way to eliminate that. And whether you automated it, eliminated it, or you could make incredible gains. And the Japanese focused on that. That's the Toyota way. I did a whole pile of consulting just going through processes. I did one for Inco. I guess you say the name now, it's a long time ago, but Inco, where they were taking 180 days to pay a bill. And most of it was because they had these processes that had to be followed no matter what. We pasted this together on a wall and looked at it and said, do you really have to do that? Do you really have? Is there a better way to do that? And we dropped that down to 45 to 30 days on average. Over and over, people did that. I'm not the genius of this. People did this over and over again. I think AI is going to be much the same. There's going to be those people who've got to fire everybody and we'll bring in Mr. AI. And they're going to fall flat on their face.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then there are going to be people who say, start with the outcomes we want, take a look at the processes we have, and ask yourself, how much could we get rid of today? And not
Yes.
so we can boot people out the door, which, and I'm not saying there are competitive industries where, yes, headcount matters. But imagine what happens if you enable your people so they're not booking meetings, so they're not writing minutes, so they're not spending 2 weeks writing a business plan that you could to get the draft together because it's the first time they've done it and they actually have to go through and look at all this sort of stuff. There's just so many opportunities to enable people to actually be able to think.
Yes. Well, that was the other discussion I had with a couple of individuals this week too, was if the company brings in AI, am I at risk at losing my job?
Yeah.
And I said, realistically, no. All it's going to do is it's going to take some of the tasks, those mundane tasks off your plate so you can focus on the things that you should be focusing on, where you're bringing value to the company.
And I like to think that people would everybody talks about, I hate my job, but they pay me, is a classic refrain. And I think that if you could somehow figure out a way to get people to do more interesting things so that they, at the end of the day, feel like what they've done matters. I think that not only do you push your company forward, do you push society forward, but you make people feel like their time at your place of business has meant something. And I think that's difficult sometimes, especially when we're living in a world of replaceable people and I can just move this person over here. Or for that matter, I take the person who is, as you put it, John, highly qualified, and you have them basically sit out of this planning meeting or whatever, because today it's their turn to take minutes. So they can't
Yeah.
really contribute. And of course, they can't really focus on taking all the information down because they're sitting there trying to listen and take notes at the same time. There's some things that are crazy. And I can understand some of the reluctance in trying to apply some of these tools to business practices. And a lot of it goes back to this tsunami that we were talking about, this pile of new things that are being dropped on us every day. If you focus entirely on, oh my God, what's the new thing that's happening today? Or, oh, this just happened, then you're never going to get on top of it. You're never going to start doing anything because you're always just assuming that something new and exciting and even better is just around the corner. And I think that's where, to steal from the Google Sundar Pichai's comment about the low hanging fruit, start by grabbing those low hanging fruits,
Yep.
the things that AI is already really good at doing. And don't think, oh my God, like there's going to be all these new and other wonderful things, because the things that it's really good at doing right now, it will still be really good at doing 6 months, a
Right.
year down the road. And you'll have taken advantage of the fact that was available at the time.
And that may be the model to think about, is that AI has brought back some low-hanging fruit. For the longest time, we've been pretty good at automating our organizations. I'm not necessarily great at doing great things with that in many cases, but we've automated our organization. Got harder and harder to find easy shots. Nobody's coming in with a spreadsheet anymore. Anything's just going to totally, wow, I can speed up this job. And then AI came along.
But I think one of the things too, and again, in one of them, I did a presentation to one of the teams at the company yesterday. Part of what I was talking about was AI. And one of the things that I had said is that I can't come into their department and tell them how they should be using AI. I'm not an expert in their department. I said, I can come in and I can show you the art of the possible with AI. I can give you a playground that you can go and do it. I said, but, and I looked at the head of the department and I said, one of the things that you need to do is you need to commit to giving your staff time during their work week to go and play with it, because they're the ones that know the processes within the department. They're the ones that are going to be able to come back and go, you know what? If I use AI, I can cut 4 hours a week off of my job or off of Dave's job or Sally's job by utilizing AI to eliminate this and this. And the only way you're going to do that is to give them time to play around with it.
There's, just to give you an idea of how difficult it, and again, we're back to this linear thinking that we're wired for. We're wired for evolution taking thousands of years to get us to the next mental innovation or the next little physical innovation. But the real-time camera view that was introduced by Google and introduced by OpenAI this week, the idea behind the possibilities of this technology are actually, frankly, mind-boggling. And yet the biggest thing that we were able to demonstrate, and this is like from the companies that are producing this stuff, it's, oh, I'm traveling on a bus and this was amazing. I'm traveling on a bus. Oh, look at this thing over here. What could I do if I went to this thing? And it's looking through the camera and telling you about it in real time. This is like incredible, amazing, mind-boggling technology. And the best that we can come up with is, what can I do in that building? Or how do I get from this location to that location based on where I am at the moment? And these are still small ideas, but we have these amazing magical tools, and we are struggling to try to come up with something other than the most basic of things that we do on a day-to-day basis.
I think Google Gemini, or Google, announced almost on parallel with OpenAI, almost everything back to back. And we can actually go and match those up. We can match those up and say that they've come out, and in some places they're better, in some places not. But basically it's a wash. For toolset, you could pick one, pick the other. Doesn't really matter. Mix and match for all I care. Marcel, you'll be pleased to know I'm now paying for Google's new AI. Why? Because it's fully integrated. It's what Microsoft could have been if Microsoft could get their thumb out of their bum and actually get some things done. And that's the loser in this may be Microsoft in the short run. They're not going to go away, but I'm just saying they just haven't integrated. I looked at how the Google suite was integrated and went, oh my God. I felt like I looked at it when I was seeing Salesforce.com for the first time.
But what you're seeing today versus what you're seeing 6 months from now, or even 3 months from now, I think is going to be completely different. I think some of the slow runners are going to catch up. I think some of them are going to fall off the face of the earth or get bought out or something. I look at it that down the road, and whether that's 3 months, 6 months, a year, I think they're all going to look very similar. That Google, hopefully Microsoft, OpenAI, any of the guys that are lagging behind what OpenAI launched the last couple of weeks, I think they're going to be scrambling to try and bring it to market.
And not to be critical, actually to be critical of Microsoft. Why is OpenAI giving me, the Mac user, what percentage are we of computers out there? 10?
1. Sorry.
No, but it ain't a lot. And why do I have for my phone ChatGPT? Why do I have this new app for my desktop? How much talent do you have at Microsoft?
I know.
You're telling me that these guys who put the desktop together, they are not the geniuses of code. They're
Mhm.
taking what was already developed in AI, using the API and putting it onto a computer.
Yep.
The fact that Microsoft hasn't led with its $10 billion investment in OpenAI mystifies me.
Well,
Just
and
mystifies me.
it's no secret through these shows that I've said that I'm a Microsoft guy, partly because I want to be, but partly more so because I have to be with work. I have to tell you, I am disappointed. I sit here discussing these things with you two, and I'm struggling to try and justify why I'm still a Microsoft guy. OpenAI has brought all of these things out. Google's coming out with all of theirs and Notebook LM and everything else. And you're right. It feels like Microsoft is lagging behind. And I have to face that at work going, people that have been watching what's coming out of OpenAI and they go, can Microsoft do that? Can Microsoft do that? No, not yet. We're hoping it'll come.
Except that Microsoft can do that. It's more a question of how visible it is in terms of what you're doing. There
Yeah.
are patchy ways, if you'll pardon the Apache server. Sorry,
Uh,
my
The
open
Linux
source
guy
root
comes in.
seeking.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
even
Linux,
Marcel
the
is
Linux
supporting
guy.
showing that-
Microsoft, he takes a shot. Yeah, okay.
Marcel is just
well-
showing that he can do it too.
Yeah, no, the fact of the matter, it's hard for me to not gloat because, of course, Linux has won. It is the single most popular operating system in the entire world, not necessarily on the desktop. Everything runs on
Mhm.
Linux, and everything has got a Linux kernel running in it, like my watch, your thermostat at home, all the smart devices, they're all running little tiny Linux kernels. Every supercomputer in the world is running Linux. The Microsoft architecture is running Linux. The only place that you don't see it in a big way is on the desktop. So in a way, it's like you don't notice it, but Linux has won in a way that nobody could possibly ever imagine by being ubiquitous, by being the scaffolding on which the entire internet is built, including all of these AI wonders that are sitting out there. So yeah, it's in some ways it's no, of course, Linux is never going to be the desktop operating system of choice, although it's what runs on Chromebooks, right? Android is Linux. It has a different name, but it's Linux.
Question
So yes,
about whether there's going to be a desktop, though.
that's actually a really interesting question. And at one time I would have balked, and I'm willing to admit this. I balked at the idea that we would be sending this much information down to individual devices and desktops. I struggled to try to figure this out because I couldn't see the world creating this much investment in bandwidth. Now, again, this is a long time ago that I was of this opinion. I just couldn't see it happening. And now, of course, we're sending videos into somebody's smartphone, for God's sakes.
Yep.
Like
Mhm.
and I feel the same way about power. Yes, we're talking nuclear reactors and things like this, but if we're going to make it to a Kardashev 1 civilization so that we can then spread out into the cosmos, then we have to accept the fact that we're going to need more and more power all the time. And we better get used to the idea that this is going to happen, which means we're going to have to start thinking smart about things like nuclear and solar and wind and stuff like that,
Yep.
renewable forms of energy of all types, and not cutting back on energy,
Mhm.
but increasing energy production to the point that energy is as ubiquitous as Linux is and as the infrastructure of the internet.
But just in the same method. And this is the things that AI may be doing for us. We might solve the green energy crisis by needing more energy rather than trying to use less.
Isn't that an interesting
could
thought?
be, that could
Yeah.
be the biggest thing that happens of this. But going back to the desktop already, my phone is a complex device, but my desktop, my new Windows desktop, I don't have a single application other than the operating system that runs on that device.
Mhm.
All of the applications are cloud applications. They run in
Like a
browser.
Chromebook.
Yeah. The only reason that I'm there is because one part of this new program I'm using has to be served by a Windows operating system, and that's it. If there was a virtual Windows operating system and I was smart enough to implement that, which I probably should be, but I also have some physical connections that might make, I wouldn't even need that computer. So the idea that we're still running a desktop is, who knows? Let's go back to this, though, and just back up for a second for people who followed us this far and talk about what happened last week, which was, we got a little off track, but I think establishing some things. I'm just going to summarize them. You guys, if you're not playing, and we'll say this again, if you're not playing, you're out of the game. John, you
Yep.
said it accurately. Make time in the week. The reason why Google was so exceptional at advancing things was their 10% time. When we go back to the AI projects, the things that saved them was not what was happening in the big labs, but a lot of the things that kept them in the game and kept them forward were adventurous projects, that 10% time. People are
Yep.
doing stuff in labs. So make time, find the things that are repetitive, annoying, and take up your time. And if people just got started with that, they'd be great, I think, just as to level set with that.
It's a
Did I
quick
miss
win.
anything?
No, I think it's
There, sorry, I was just going to say I've got my foot partly also in the creative community, and I'm not talking about making YouTube videos specifically, but I'm an author. I've written a hell of a lot of words over the years, let's just say, and I know a lot of writers, and I know a lot of artists who work in the business as well, and there is a lot of anger at generative AI in general. And of course, the question of copyright and the question of whether it's stealing your work and so forth
Yep.
still hovers out there. But even while these things are being decided and being talked about in the court and in society and so forth, there are people who have come out entirely against this. They are basically the modern Luddites, to put it bluntly. They've decided that this is the enemy and we must do everything we can to fight against and shut down the enemy once and for all to preserve the glory of whatever it means to be human. And I'm not trying to be a nihilist here. Life is meaningless. This is not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is that this is something that you cannot ignore. It is not going away. And being angry about it and attacking everyone who's trying to use these things and making people feel bad for using these things is not going to help you in the long run or help whatever it is you're trying to do for the world in the long run. You have to accept that, yes, there are definite questions, and I agree. And in fact, some of those questions are based around copyright. Who should benefit from the information that's out there that people are obviously making billions of dollars on? While those things are being decided, you should embrace the fact that the technology is here so that if things don't work out your way, you are still able to participate in this brave new world. And I think that's a big deal. And I don't just mean that in business, but in life, you're either participating or you've given up.
Yeah.
And fighting against a tidal wave is the same as giving up. The tidal wave is going to hit you and you're going to lose. So
I agree. But you can't blame it all on AI either. And I become one of those annoying people's parties. I actually discovered this Christmas party that I'm like the accountant that she didn't want to talk to now because I don't want to, I just don't have time to, or I get better example is in the early days of the internet when I was quite active in it. I built, there were 200 websites in the world when I built one of the first ones with a group of them. You guys have probably done similar things, but
Mhm.
we were annoying and people that were boring at parties because we're talking about stuff that I got this
Nerd-like.
modem to work, and I could do all these things. So that's a piece of, I discovered I was really boring about those sorts of things, but I'm still amazed at how some people have closed off to this because let's take music, for example. I'm a musician and I love acoustic music. I love to play music. When you sent me a song, Marcel, and it was fully formed and it had taken 4 minutes and it sounded better than a lot of the stuff that came out of the studio. The real question is, why did that sound better than the stuff that's coming out of studios? Not that I should blame AI, but why is that more creative than the music that's happening? And I was playing with our band the other day, and a lot of us are older musicians, and we were talking about this and saying, we haven't felt the creative impetus in a lot of music.
Mhm.
So that's piece one. If every female singer sounds the same right now, don't blame AI. Piece
Mm.
two, streaming. The fact that you get
Yes.
0.001 cent for your song has nothing to do with AI. The crisis in music and the arts is not
Yep.
only on AI. AI is a symptom of it, something is in transformation. So I'll give you an example of a project I'm working on with a group. They are leveraging AI to bring a creative community together and to try and defeat some of the things that have happened in social media. I think it's brilliant. I don't know
Well,
if it
and
will go anywhere. I don't know if it will succeed, but if it doesn't, somebody else will.
my brother-in-law is an artist. he was an artist turned graphic designer, and he's gone back to being an artist again. And he actually uses AI as a starting point for some of the art that he paints. And so he's utilizing the tools the same way that we are, but he's utilizing the tool in a creative way to create art. And it's the same thing, Jim, that you'd have musicians where they'd have a lot of the stuff that they would have a computer there for so that they could do background sounds and things like that. And I think that there's the potential for that type of thing in today's music as well.
Yeah. But if you're old enough, you remember when Bob Dylan picked up an electric guitar and everybody freaked out.
Actually, the most amazing thing was when he put down his acoustic guitar and picked up a Fender. That was the most amazing thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that was apparently the people were freaking out about that. And Bob Dylan was thinking of getting out of music at the time. And arguably playing electric made him, gave him the second impetus or the second change in his career that gave him the creativity.
Can I say something about electric guitars?
Absolutely.
This is the mediocre guitar player talking here, as opposed to a real guitar player. But the new James Gunn Superman trailer has just dropped. And it has a great nod to the Christopher Reeve Superman in the sense that it's the theme in the background is the John Williams theme from the Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. And here's what's really cool. It's done in the background on an electric guitar. It's played, that theme is played. It is effing awesome. I want the whole thing and I want to listen to it on repeat over and over again. I swear to God, this thing is fantastic. It's the most wonderful thing I've heard in a long time. The Superman theme done on an electric guitar. It's just wonderful. You got to listen to it. Like, it's great.
So the challenge is you can, and I think I put this into the book, was the idea that you can defy technological advancement. If you can be a buggy whip manufacturer in the current world, you just have to be the last one and the best one. So if that's your strategy, then you got to be among the last and the best. Yo-Yo Ma is never going to be replaced on the cello by a synthesizer. Why? Because he's Yo-Yo Ma. So if that's your strategy, you got to be better. You cannot be an average campfire player, claim that you have a right for everybody in the world to listen to you. Or,
well, you know what? I'm not going to do that to them anyway. They're safe.
So that's the same strategy. If you want to stay in business and stay off the technology path, be really creative about it. Be the best and meet a need. But it's still that idea that if you can do it some way better with AI, it's going to happen. This is why all of these people remember Grammarly?
Yes. Of course. It's still around.
But they've actually merged with somebody else. They're trying to survive this. I can't imagine why I would use Grammarly now. I've taken it off all my devices. Why? I've got AI integrated with it. AI spells just as well, and it's less annoying than Grammarly. But, and I can customize it. That just falls off the edge of the earth if they don't compete. But a lot of these things, and we've seen it already with OpenAI, all of the things that are being integrated more and more. One of the things that I'm thinking about, and Marcel, you may know more about this actually, but I think that the next thing that the shoe that could drop from OpenAI is, because I watched their API and their function calls. And I think this is some of the, when you get to the depth of these things, OpenAI has done some things better than Google and others that nobody really talks about. Function calls are one of them. And they've actually early in the game embedded this idea you can call specific functions. Makes it really a developer's paradise in there. Now, the question is, there were all these companies that were there to integrate AI tools and other tools. I'm not so sure that's not the next place for OpenAI to go, is to supply their own integration. And if they do that, then they start to absorb more and more of these little tools that come up in the market, this thing, that thing, and bring them in. What does that sound like? Microsoft. We no longer have to invent everything. We'll watch you develop it. Maybe we'll buy you, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just develop our own, like they did with the browser and wiped out Mozilla. The whole idea of being a big platform that absorbs these things could be a good play for OpenAI as well.
It's interesting you mentioned the Mozilla side of it, because What really killed Mozilla or drove it to its knees is another open source browser, which was Chromium. Chrome is the commercialization of the open source browser Chromium, which was built on top of WebKit. Sorry, I'm going to mention Linux again, which came out of the KDE desktop in the Linux world is where WebKit was born. So we've got this evolution of products going through. But to link back to your API idea, I was listening to something this morning over breakfast, oddly, and they were talking about the idea that no one actually knows how much money, and maybe it's because they're not a for-profit company at the moment, but no one actually knows how much money they're making from all of these backroom business deals that OpenAI is making at the moment. And OpenAI is being rolled into a plethora of products out there. And that, of course, is going to include things like backend and API access. And if you think about it, that is also what Meta is doing as well. Meta is rolling in their AI into absolutely every single product, every single thing that Meta makes, including the Ray-Ban smart glasses, the Meta virtual reality headsets, every application that they've got, whether it's WhatsApp and Messenger and Facebook and so forth. The AI is rolled into everything. ChatGPT and OpenAI's product is being rolled into a host of other products that have nothing to do with OpenAI specifically directly. The difference with Google is Google's AI is being rolled into Google and across all their product offerings. And Microsoft has relied for a long time on being somebody who offers solutions in terms of the desktop and applications in terms of Word and Excel and all these other sorts of things. And of course, they wandered into games with Xbox and so on. But it was always about selling products as opposed to selling an integrated service of some sort. And they're only recently starting to do that. If you think of Office 365, the idea was to finally move the Office suite off of the desktop and run it entirely from the cloud. And I don't blame Microsoft for that because they have an old, stodgy, established business base that moves at the speed of sound as opposed to at the speed of light. Okay. They have trouble keeping up even with Mach 1. Consequently, their bread and butter, the customer base that they've got, I think is part of what's holding them back.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because they're offering products and people expect their products to work a particular way.
Yep. So this is where innovation and where transformation and where things get messy with being able to totally revolutionize a group is you get the problem with Microsoft is you're right, is its success, its legacy customers and how they work and how you can move with them. And that's a huge piece. Google has the same problem competing with OpenAI on search. Mark my words on this. Google's making, I think, 3/4 of its money with search ads and ads that are related to search. And they could have done the same thing that Perplexity did, the same thing that OpenAI is doing with search. They could have made a great search product. And there are a lot of people predicting the end of Google search. And I'm not totally in disagreement with them. And the reason is they've got so much money linked into the way they do it, they can't move. It's the same piece. And when it comes to companies adopting AI, it's the same thing. We've got so much embedded in our current processes and the things. Can we actually make the change? The legacy piece holds us back all the time. And that's where another piece. Now, the next piece that happens though, and this is that where you get down to it, I think we have to watch is you've said a couple of things, Marcel, Meta, and you brought that up in one of our first conversations. Meta's a sleeper out there. They're spending a ton. Amazon is going to be an AI company from stem to stern. They're already automated. They're pathetic at customer service, but the reason is that they've got everything automated, but they'll catch up. They will use AI to redefine how you can automate a company. Even those warehouses where they're suffering from unionization and strikes and all that sort of stuff, those will be automated.
Give it 6 months that I think you're going to see the landscape across the board change dramatically because Meta has been putting all of this stuff in under the covers. At some point, it's going to come out and float to the top. OpenAI has been very vocal over the last 12 days on all these new technologies. Some of the other players are still doing the same things. They're just not as vocal. So I think once it all bubbles up to the top, it'll be interesting to see what choices we have out there.
Competition is wonderful.
And keep in mind that Mark Zuckerberg is basically king. He is the founder and principal of Meta. What he says goes. So you might have investors going, I don't know if we should be spending all these $1 billion on virtual reality and artificial intelligence and so forth. Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg just has to say, yeah, we are. And that's the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. And Elon Musk.
Exactly.
With
XAI
that nobody talks about. Personally, I find the man offensive and I'm tired of him. I just don't want to contribute money to his empire. The way he's treated his trans daughter, the way he's put hate into X, I have no time for it. Everybody else can do what they want. I'm not playing. But you can't ignore him. He is a force in there. And the Chinese.
He's an annoying genius.
Yeah. And the Chinese, which everybody's not paying much attention to. The Chinese, there's a guy and Jensen Huang talked about him. I can never remember his name, but he went over to China, he lived in North America, went over to China, built an AI business, doesn't have any access to GPUs, ended up making their AI so efficient, and don't just dismiss what this thing can do. Mm-hmm. Made their AI so efficient, they can do a training run for $3 million. It costs $100 million easily to do the last training run of OpenAI. And we may be in the 500 million and the $1 billion stage soon. So if you have that sort of comp advantage in AI, and Alibaba's AI is now clocking, it's an open source AI, it's clocking at about the level of GPT-4. I've talked about Sony and JVC, and Marcelo buy a Sony because he wants to have the greatest thing out there. I'm going to wait 6 months more and buy a JVC for half the price.
Yeah.
I'm cheap. I can't help it. But it makes a good illustration that don't discount those people who come into the market with a cost and a performance advantage.
And I'm sorry to bring the T word into this, and the T word, tariffs, is the way that we've somehow chosen to compete against the Chinese. And all that has done is spurred the Chinese on to come up with clever ways to push their technology to the point that they are probably the world leaders in electric vehicles at the moment, in EV technology. We have Google's VO2 video model that just came out recently. But the fact is, there's some amazing video products that are available in China right now that, by the way, you can use to circumvent all these nasty copyright rules to create characters. I love using Minimax, for instance. Yep. It's one of my favorite video generators, and it's a product out of China. China is leaping forward in terms of humanoid robot development.
Yep.
All of these amazing things are happening, and they're happening in spite of people throwing up things like tariffs and import regulations, things like that. It's not stopping anything. The old ways of doing things have to be retired, I'm sorry to say.
And I was going to say the same thing, that Trump's putting 100% tariffs on.
That's the other T word.
China. I know. That's the T word I thought you were putting out.
Another guy I don't want to talk about. Jeez.
I know. But all that's doing is it's making China more productive and more profitable, because they are forced to do these things because they're not going to be able to get it from the US.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to come back to bite him in the ass.
The consumer end of this is going to be won by people who serve consumers. The business end is going to be won by people who serve businesses with better functions. And so far, that ability to develop it in the US, and they've somehow made a big of the Silicon Valley develops all these great ideas. Who makes most of your chips? TMSC in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Who makes most of your TVs? China does. And will they ever be able to bring that back? Possibly. Actually, I think automated manufacturing.
But you can't do that overnight. That's not the sort of thing that happens overnight.
Yeah, but I think we ignore them in our peril. I sent you one on our Discord channel. I sent you this video piece that, again, another simple one out of China that is, it was amazing. I looked at it and said, this is as good as anything else that's out there, and it's being developed. It's free, open source, and has no guardrails on it. You can do anything you want on it, which is the other thing I worry about it in terms of AI. And that's the competition, as I always say, is a marvelous thing. It's been driving us and doing wonderful things. It will cause us to avoid safety. I'm absolutely certain of this, that people are going to steamroller over safety and be able to justify that in the name of we have to stay ahead of the Chinese, or we have to stay ahead, we have to compete. So that's a balance that we've been doing in industry for 200 years, 300 years. And we're no better at it. That's the reality of our world. The whole issue of can we adapt this and use it to generate wealth, that's our challenge.
None of that might matter at all after 2:00 today, after we finished watching the 12th day of Christmas release party and announce AGI, although this could be moot at that point.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys noticed it, but is his name Kevin, the product lead
Yeah.
at OpenAI? It was either day 10 or it might have been, I don't know, it was day 9, 10, or 11. He actually said AGI. He talked about AGI as
Yeah.
if it was part of everything that they were. So that's, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what day 12 is.
I know the fact that we've got 3 guys on this podcast, Google can't automate us yet. but
I don't know about that. Did you watch my latest video clip? I automated myself.
I saw you.
Yes.
I was going to ask you if you were really you, but that's another story. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, but I
That
can
was
always tell because the automated Marcel dresses better.
Oh, I know.
And has
I know,
longer hair.
man. I wish. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I wish I had his budget for clothes, man.
Yeah. I was interviewing somebody I said that Red Green was my wardrobe advisor for the podcasts, and they laughed, but they did that laugh that was a little too honest. So
Yeah.
last thing, so we're going to wrap up in this. One of the things I want to do over the next week is I started to create a chart to compare Google and OpenAI and others in terms of what's available in the market. I'm going to try and keep that project going, because I think when you actually look at it, you start to see OpenAI made all the noise and will make all the noise, and it's done a brilliant job. I think Sam Altman there's only one person you compare him to, and that's Steve Jobs, and being able to market the stuff. And even those little stories they tell, they have a way of, I look at the Santa story. They've created a Santa you can talk to. It doesn't take a big gap to go, wait a minute, that could be my customer service person. They're better at telling the stories.
Yes.
They talk about a story of how they're going to take their phone and it's going to teach you to make coffee. As I said before, if IKEA isn't watching that, they're nuts, because at the end of every IKEA story is 5 parts left over with my wife looking at me going, where do those go? I don't know. And there's all kinds of stories woven into those 12 days that they've done very cleverly that show how their products can be used. And I think that's going to be, that I think alone is worth the trip. But it doesn't mean it's not out there in other places.
No, that's what I was saying before, is they're ingenious as far as how they have marketed this. The way that they have brought all of this new technology to the table in the last 12 days. How many other companies are doing it? Marcel's talked about the video from Google and all of these other technologies that just are flying under the radar. And that's why I was saying
Yep.
it'll be interesting to see the comparator even 6 months from now as to what the other players are.
We're actually pausing this recording and then coming back later after the 12th day offering has happened. So shall we put our cards on the table as to what we think is going to be? I think I said that we're going to see another frontier model, probably at the 4.5 level, maybe 5, but probably 4.5. Jim, I believe, is going
I'm
with
going with
expanded
glasses.
AP.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
So
going with
expanded-
glasses.
It's a device.
John, do you want to make your prediction?
I don't know. I'm at a loss because I think that there are so many things that it could be. I would tend to lean, I think, towards a new model because it is getting a little old. It's been around for 2 weeks. Of course it's getting old, but I think that's probably where I'm leaning.
So we'll come back. One thing I want to make sure I capture in this is that this is going to be our last show of the season, but we've opened a Discord channel for the 5 of you out there who can't get enough of this discussion. We've been running our own discussion on a Discord channel. Marcel, you started this. Do you want to introduce it to people?
Sure. I put the original Discord channel together so that the 3 of us could keep bouncing ideas around outside of the semi-official getting together and chatting about this in a podcast. But what I thought would be fun was set up yet another Discord server, but this one open to the public. And I think what we will do is, because reading a Discord link on the air is just too weird, we should have it in the show notes so that there's a Discord link.
Absolutely.
And what it will be is a place for people to gather and chat about some of the ideas that we're tossing around, post AI news stories that might be of interest to people, share tips and tricks about how you use all this stuff in your business and how you think that we should be using this thing. And of course, it's also a place to tell us that we're completely out to lunch on all of these things if you prefer to go down that road. But we would love to have you there. It's completely free. There's no sales pitch. You just come in, you chat with people who are like-minded, who are trying to figure out what to do with this stuff, particularly from a business perspective, but maybe in your daily life as well. Wide open. Please join, come in, be part of the conversation.
I think we'll put out some notes on the show notes, but also in social media and LinkedIn and other places that announces that we've got this running.
Sounds good.
You don't have to write down the link. We'll get that to you. And it's worth it just to see Marcel in a suit. I'm going to let you guys go, and we will come back after the watch party.
And a wardrobe change.
We are going to stop, and we're going to wait for the OpenAI announcement. Then we're going to come back and finish up. We're back from our watch party. And what did you guys think?
Well, I think I'm taking a win on this one because I did mention O3 at the beginning of the podcast.
Yep. You got O3 on your
so I
bingo
did
card.
mention that as a possibility. And I said that it was likely going to be another frontier model, whether they call it 4.5 or something else is another matter. I said that didn't think it would be 5 because that was going to be sometime next year.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm
Did
taking
you
a
say
win
it
for
would
it.
stink as an announcement?
No, I did not say that, but here's what I found interesting. The argument that they did it for safety, which sounds an awful lot like the early OpenAI stuff. It's, we've got this model. It's terribly dangerous. We're only going to release it to certain developers, including safety testers, before we unleash it on the world. And to me, you're familiar with the concept of safety theater, right? When you go to the airport and we need you to take your shoes off and give us like any bottles that are bigger than this size, especially if they're filled with booze, and then we'll take those back home with us because you're not allowed to take that on board the plane. Anyway, that's safety theater. And I feel like maybe I'm just growing cynical in my old age, but to me, this felt a little bit like safety theater. So we've got this really cool thing, but it quite possibly can't handle the load of that kind of number crunching. It may very well be as amazing a model as they described, and as the math contest researchers that they had with them seemed to imply, that it was like above a human expert on things that it had never seen before, that it could reason from first principles, basically. And that is extremely impressive. It's very cool. But effectively what they were saying is, look, we've got this really cool thing, and we've got these people that confirm and certify that it's really cool, but you're not seeing it. Not anytime soon, maybe next year or something.
This feels a little bit like they pushed us off, but they had a rope there for you to grab onto on the way down. And what I mean by that, it almost felt we're not quite ready yet, but hey, let's put O3 in it as the 12th day and let people know that it'll be coming out later.
The content here, and I think there's a lot we could say, but this was just such a marketing disaster to take you through 11 days and then go, oh yeah, and we got O3.
Yeah.
What?
I know.
And even Altman, you could see Altman was trying to save it. You didn't rehearse this, guys? He's got 2 guys on a computer showing you PowerPoint slides of how good it's going to be in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
No, content-wise, there were some things that they had, right? One thing surprised the heck out of me, how they're really becoming a company aimed at coders.
Yes.
When they did the 10th day and it was all about code and all about developers. Mm-hmm. In the podcast, I've said that these things that cleverly cover the areas where they were perceived as being weak. And coding, regardless of whether they were or not, they were perceived as being weak. So the 10th or the 9th day, I was going to say, okay, you can spend a whole day on that. And this one really was, hey, our models are cheaper. You can develop better with them. They're going to have math in them and physics, so you can be able to do your coding better. And here's some stats for you. And I'm going to bring in 2 coders to show you this. And I went, that's not what I would end with. For a company that I thought was trying to become a commercial sort of consumer success as much as an enterprise company.
If they had ended with Sora, like this should have been really, it is the announcement of a frontier model, but the announcement of a frontier model without showing anybody the frontier model.
Yeah.
So it's, who is it that used to do Microsoft? That's who does this all the time. Historically, it's, we've got like really great products, which we will show you someday.
We used to call that
they used to-
vaporware.
this kind of felt the same way. It's going to be really great. There's somebody else who used to do this all the time. It's going to be, Elon Musk.
But yeah, the numbers are outstanding. With 01, they talked about it being above PhD level at 78. This one's 87.7 in 03, which is outstanding, but wait until it comes out and we'll see.
And the bringing in the guy, what was his name, from ARC Prize?
ARC,
Yes.
yeah, ARC AGI.
Yeah, and their
research.
and ARC, I know their test, and that test is actually phenomenal in terms of being able to deal with unstructured logic and test these models, because the numbers keep going up, but I don't know how much these models are being gamed by pre-training. But ARC was supposed to be a solution for that. It would give a model simple things that were simple for a human, difficult for a model.
Yep.
And it aced those tests. But again, it's like presentation wise.
If you look at what they launched over the 12 days, there were other more sensational things that project, search, the advanced voice, Apple Intelligence, any of those to me are more stellar as far as how do you finish off the 12 days. If they wanted to do the 03 either the day before or the day after the dev tools, and then finish off with some of these other things that everybody would find beneficial and useful and have a lot more of that wow factor.
I think they should have had the 12 Days of Christmas as a song, recapped everything they did, and ended, and a model named 03. And at least they would have had some showtime there.
Yeah.
Like, there was just no show visits.
It was a bit of a lunch bag letdown at the end because it was like, okay, so is it over?
Okay, so, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. And you yourself, Jim, said that it looked like Altman was trying to pull it back together or trying to whip up the excitement and so on. And I half wondered if there was something else that was supposed to happen today, like they were going to do. And let me just play this
like
out.
glasses.
The reason I wonder about
then Jim would have won the bet.
Jim would have won the bet. But the reason I wondered about that, of course, is if you remember just before we came on this morning, I don't know if it shows up I don't know if we discussed it in the podcast or I suggested in the podcast, but Google released their 2.0 advanced model yesterday. Like they did the testing, but Gemini, let me just go into it now. So for the people who are paying for 2.0 experimental advanced preview, EXP 1206, who the hell comes up with these names? But anyway, so they've actually made this available to anyone with a Plus account. And this is supposed to be a bleeding edge reasoning model, okay, to take on 01.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the model that's supposed to say, yeah, you got 01, but hey, look over here. We've got 2.0 experimental advanced 1206. And all of a sudden, it's like OpenAI is sitting back there going, okay, so Google just threw this out yesterday. We got to throw out something that cast some shade on that. And they have no idea. I'm just making this up.
1, Google's model is 2, and they skipped a number to go to 3.
They said, and I didn't make out the name, but they said something about that they didn't want to step on somebody's toes by calling it 02, so they've called it 03. I said to Marcel earlier, they just didn't want it to get conflicted with or confused with oxygen, but
yeah, but 03 is ozone. You know that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. No, but 1, 2, 3, you might actually have. I haven't seen a number played like this since Microsoft didn't announce Windows 9. And that's just because it probably stank so badly they couldn't release it. But they went straight from 8 to 10. But look at this. They went from 1 to 3, but you might have picked that out. That's okay. I'd rather believe
I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but it looked like it was thrown together at the last minute, whereas the other ones looked a little bit more polished.
Yes.
Everything else had a demo. Everything else had a real demo.
I wondered if it was one of two things. Either they had planned on something else that failed right before they went to air, or, as you said, that it's, oh, wow, here's 2.0. We got to come out with 3.
Yeah.
Again, idle speculation, but
Interesting.
You just
So
want to be a double winner, Marcel.
There you go.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
So
Gagne.
just Gagne, yeah. Oh yeah.
Ben oui.
The O3 model, it is impressive, and they are putting it into testing. I tried to sign up as a tester, but I couldn't find the link on their page yet. So we'll see what happens with that. But all in all, a little bit of a lunch bag letdown from all of this, but still an amazing 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just point out that it is Friday night, and here at least Friday night means pizza and a bottle of wine. I don't feel totally let down because I know that there's something to look forward to at the end of this day, even if I didn't get exactly what I wanted for OpenAI today.
Good, guys. We'll be back in the new year, and we will post a link. Marcel, you're going to send me the link. Is there a link to the
Project Synapse.
our new?
Oh, the Discord server. The
Discord
new, yes,
server?
yes. Actually, I did send the link, but I'll send it
Right,
again
okay.
to you.
Yeah.
And we can
So we'll
include that
post-
in the show notes.
Yep, we'll post a link to our Discord server, and there you can find. I think we should be able to put some Christmas music on it or something for people.
I'll
So-
put my dystopian Christmas song that I made a couple of weeks ago. How's that?
There you
That would
go.
Be that it's worth it for that and Marcel and his.
It would be awesome. Just awesome. Actually, that's an interesting idea. What I should do is I should make an avatar of me as Santa and then have me welcoming everybody into the Discord server. What do you think?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've got 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes while I'm putting this together and editing this over the next hour. You could send me an ending song for this too.
An ending song. Man, I
About
don't know how to
10
wrap
minutes,
that up,
man.
but I'll see what I
Yeah.
I've
Look.
He
Anyway,
needs
Merry
a
Christmas,
You're
lavender.
guys.
hurting me. You're hurting me.
Yeah. Yeah. Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas. Happy New Year.
All the
We'll
best to
keep in
both of
touch
you
on
and your
Discord,
family.
and we'll be back here in the second week of January on Saturday.
John, Jim, and Marcel from Project Synapse, where we explore the brave new world of AI. Wish you a Merry Christmas, all good things must end. But in January we'll be back again. So Merry Christmas, everyone, and may your new year be filled with fun. Till New Year be filled with fun. Well, Merry Christmas, but in January we'll be back again. So Merry Christmas, everyone, and may your new year be filled with fun.